All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you today. So as Sandra mentioned, my name is Michael Crawford, and I serve as the pastor of the disability ministry at Grace Church in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. We do about 4 respites each year, and so I titled my talk, Waiting to Exhale, because that's, when you think about a respite, that's really what a lot of our families they're doing when it comes to respite nights. We hear all the time that respite nights really are one of the few times where families impacted by disabilities can just have a chance to breathe and just catch chaos and craziness of life that can sometimes come with caring for someone with a disability. So my hope is to give you, in 15 minutes, just a few tools and tips that we use at our church that hopefully can equip your church to do church-based respite nights. So we'll go to the next slide here. Sorry, my slides are so small there. If you want a copy of it, I'll have some of that as well. So before you get into the details of a respite night, you have to back up and you have to start by asking, why are respite nights even needed to begin with? One of my favorite passages in the Bible is Luke chapter 5, verse 16. And in this passage, Jesus is busy. He's going around doing miracles and he's healing and he's going here and he's there. And Jesus is a busy man. And I love what the verse says. It says, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. So in a way, Jesus took a respite for himself. He took time to withdraw from the busyness of life. And so respites are needed because families impacted by disabilities, just like Jesus, simply need time to withdraw. If we look at this next slide, so like we mentioned earlier, respites, well, what is a respite? A respite is really a time to just withdraw, to get away from the busyness of life, to reconnect for a lot of couples, and just to catch their breath. Respites, remember, may be the only time parents and caretakers get to themselves. And this is why they're vitally important. And this is why we love when churches do church-based respite nights. Because it's so important for their physical health, their mental health, and their spiritual health. So who are respites for? I do want to clarify something. Respites are not just for the participants. They're for the parents. They're for the caretakers. Now, the participants can come in and have fun and benefit from them and enjoy and fellowship and hang out with their friends. But respites are really for the parents and for the caretakers. And so you want to design your respite to ensure that parents and caretakers have as little to worry about as possible. And so with that in mind, we can go ahead and get into some of the details here. There's 5 main things that you want to consider. Get to my notes here. There's really 5 main things that you want to consider when you're doing a church-based respite night. That's the physical space, your volunteers, safety and security, the participants, and promoting or marketing your church-based respite night. So we'll get into each of those. Starting with the physical space. So when you look at the actual physical space, this will be vitally important to your respite night. So depending on how your church is set up, it may be difficult to use your entire church for the respite night. So we really recommend sectioning off just a portion of the church for the respite night. That way you can really, you can do a really good job of keeping track of everyone and kind of containing everyone into one area instead of trying to run around the entire church, finding locations and finding where people are. Try to section off. Don't feel like you have to use the entire church for your respite night. Also for the physical space, in terms of food, and we'll get into this more later, but in terms of food, you also want to be aware to use areas where it's okay for food to be dropped and for drinks to be spilled. For food to be dropped and for drinks to be spilled. So if there's an area of your church that has really nice carpet or, something that you don't want to get soiled or stained, you may not want to use that part of the church. So just keep that in mind when you think about the physical space that you'll be using. Volunteers. Volunteers will be the most important piece to your respite night. We encourage you to start months ahead of time with recruiting volunteers. And if your church has small groups, respite nights are a great way for them to get into a serving opportunity. One of the things that we, go to my next page here. So we encourage you to recruit well ahead of time. We encourage you to consider having a respite leadership team so that the load of doing a respite night doesn't fall onto one or two individuals. It's really a shared load, and we have a respite leadership team at our church, and I can show you, give you some more of the logistics of that if you would like. We encourage you to have 3 types of volunteers. So when you send out a notice asking for volunteers, we encourage you to have 3 types of volunteers. Those who are comfortable serving as one-on-ones or buddies, as we call them in our church. Those who will be floaters, they kind of float throughout the general respite area, making sure everyone is safe, making sure everyone's having fun. And then the third one is those who will serve as room leads. So let's say you'll have a room that is a different theme to it. We encourage you to have people for those rooms. Let me go back actually to the physical space. One of the things that I didn't emphasize that I want to talk about is Yes, if you look down here, we suggest having a large motor area and a sensory room, and then have room themes. So at our respite nights, we have a game room. We have a movie room. We have an arts and craft room. We have a face painting room. You just want to have a large motor room, different rooms in different areas where people can go to and the participants can go and have fun. And you'll want someone in each of those rooms to serve as a room lead. All right, we talked about the volunteers. So I want to touch briefly on safety and security. So safety and security really breaks into 2 parts. You have your medical, and then you have your security. In terms of medical, we recommend having a nurse or someone with some type of medical background to serve on your respite leadership team. Someone who's comfortable with, doing medical things like administering an EpiPen, changing soiled diapers, things such as that. And we always recommend having a first aid kit on hand for any accidents or injuries that may occur. And then in terms of security, you want to have at least one security guard type person on hand. We usually have 2. If your church has a security team or a public safety team, we recommend having someone to kind of walk around and make sure that everyone is staying safe and is having fun. One thing I do want to emphasize is you always want to get parents' contact phone numbers, not just emails, because they may not be checking their emails. Get the contact phone numbers in the event something happens. You want to be able to quickly reach the parents. So I know a lot of times in this day and age it's common to just get emails, but make sure you get the contact phone number as well. And then a lot of churches use the pickup tag system. We use this as well, where when a child checks in, they get a tag, and when the parent picks them up, they have to present that tag. Just another way of staying safe. One thing you want to make sure is be sure to ask the parent if the person dropping off will be different than the person picking up, just so that you can still be safe and match up that tag system. All right. Participants. These are things you're going to want to decide ahead of time for your respite in your church, and based on your church and your team's capacity. So one thing you want to make sure to do is have a registration form. I have an example of our church's registration form that I can show anyone that they may want to see. But the most important thing on the registration form, try to collect as much information as possible, from food allergies to likes and dislikes. Are they a flight risk? Do they have a tendency to hit others? One of the things we tell parents all the time is someone is going to be hanging out with your child for 3 hours, and they may have never met your child before. What is everything they would need to know about your child, and try to have them fill out as much information as possible. It's always better to get too much information than not enough information. So when you develop your registration system, try to think of anything that you could think of, because you tell parents, someone will be with your child for 3 hours. You will not be in the building. What is everything that we need to know? Because a lot of times parents will be in such a rush to kind of get to their date night or get to their movie that they're just like, all right, bye. So make sure that you collect as much information as possible. Have parents indicate, this is important, have parents indicate the level of need, whether it's a high, moderate, or low needs child. Parents will tell you, what it is. So you want to get that, and then you want to match high, moderate, or low with the appropriate volunteer. So if a volunteer said, I'm not really comfortable working with a child with a high needs child, you don't want to match them with a high needs child. Try as much as possible to match volunteers with their comfort level. So at our church, we use a color system. Green is low needs, yellow is medium, moderate needs, and red is high needs. And then volunteers and participants have that same color. So a volunteer color on their tag should be matched, their one-on-one with the child with the appropriate needs. And then one of the most important things that our church does, and I've heard this a few times, is siblings. Our church welcomes siblings because we found that it's really not a date night if parents can get rid of one child, but they still have another child at home. So we open and we welcome siblings at our Respite Nights. Some of them come and take advantage of them. Some of them don't, but the siblings who do come, sometimes they hang out and have a great time. Sometimes they just go and just want the quiet time, but we strongly suggest, if possible, open your Respite Night up to siblings. All right, also one of the things that I didn't put in the slide but you want to be aware of also is the type of food that you serve. We suggest serving something that's pretty easy. So our church does pizza with a gluten-free option. You want to think about something that's generally liked by most of the population. Most people like pizza. So we do pizza, and then we have a couple of gluten-free options, and then we have snacks as well. So be thinking about the food that you want to serve. Okay, so promoting and marketing your event, we always recommend either a Friday or a Saturday in the evening. Some we have on Fridays, some we have on Saturdays. Our Fridays are always from 6 to 9 p.m. Our Saturdays are from 4 to 7 p.m. We always suggest Friday or Saturday evening. One of the decisions you'll have to make also amongst your church is, will your Respite Night be open to the families just in your church, or will it be a community event where you welcome families from the community? So the way our church does it is we make it a community event. And we have believe it or not, about half the families that come do not attend our church. And so it's a great way to just share the gospel, and we invite those families who don't come to come and, check us out on Sunday morning. So that's one of the things your church is going to want to decide. Are we going to start with just the families in our church, or are we going to open it up and make it a community event? Start spreading the word using church bulletins, announcements, schools, if it's going to be an outreach event. And then choose a date well ahead of time. No need to rush. You want to make sure that you do it well. So there's no need to rush. And don't be afraid to start small. I know a church that started with their Respite Nights, they just take a capacity of 10. And that's where they feel comfortable doing. I know churches that go up to 100. And so whatever your church's capacity is and whatever you feel comfortable doing, don't be afraid to start small and then see how Jesus grows your respite nights. So, in conclusion, respite nights are a ton of work. They are a lot of work, but they are so worth it when parents get back and they say, that's the first time we've had a date night in a year or a few months or things like that. So they're a lot of work, but they are worth it. So if you have any other questions, like I said, I can show you what our registration forms look like, both for our volunteers and for our participants. And I'll be around for any of those questions. I hope this has been helpful for you, and thanks so much.